odd or unusual preferences have you developed due to growing up poor? Story 1, not sure if odd or unusual, but my parents used to tell me eat all the food served since we were poor, and sometimes they wouldn't eat, so I could have a full serving of food. I'm no longer poor, but I still eat the full plate no matter how full I am. I'm aware you can put food on the fridge for the next day, or it's not the most healthy thing either, but it's the flawed solution my parents found, so I wouldn't be picky with the food or not eat on a whim. Story 2, even though I don't have to as much, I still calculate how many hours I have to work in order to afford something to decide if it is a need or a want. Do I want to work 5 hours to fill my gas tank? Or 5 hours to buy a single shirt? I want the shirt, but the shirt isn't going to get me to work. I really want to switch in several new games. I'll have to work at least 9 days to afford the Switch and the 3 games I want. And after I've worked those 9 days, I can't justify spending the money on the Switch and the games. Story 3, there were 5 of us growing up, and so we always had our good clothes and our everyday clothes. We changed out of our good clothes as soon as we got home from school, and I still have this habit to this day. I change out of my work clothes and in a lounge around the house. I don't care clothes as soon as I get home. Story 4, I still can't bring myself to write in Mad Lib books or on things that could be reused. Growing up ultra poor was a rare treat to get something frivolous, but Mad Libs were also semi-educational. So every once in a while I would get a new Mad Lib book from my dad. But I felt a lot of anxiety about wasting them by writing directly in them. If I numbered the blanks and then wrote on a separate sheet of paper with the corresponding numbers, I could reuse the books over and over again. Being really poor made me live in this awful anxiety-driven state of don't use it up because you might not get any more anytime soon, and you better use it all and not waste anything, which made me overthink and overanalyze my actions. I was confronted by this preference to not mess things up in my master's degree program because the prof would expressly tell me it was okay to write on the handouts because she would share the digital copies with us, so we would have a clean copy to use in our own classes later, and I still couldn't do it. Story 5, dated a richer girl who told me she had never had Chef RD or SpaghettiOs before, but was disgusted by them. Apparently her parents had always told her growing up that canned food was for dogs. Her saying that hit especially close to home because I eat SpaghettiOs with a grilled cheese at least 3 times a week. Story 6, I just buy 1 pair of trainers and wear them until they fall off my feet, then buy a new pair. I make good money as an adult, but I still do this. I also don't buy branded clothes. I work with a guy, and we earned the same money, yet he collected limited edition trainers and drove an expensive car. I just couldn't comprehend the waste in money. I cycle everywhere because it is good for health. I moved to Switzerland in a few weeks for a job that pays 5 times my current salary, and I still intend to cycle everywhere. Story 7, I am, to this day, unable to manage my money. Going from not being able to spend anything to having at least $300 left for whatever I want made me spend recklessly. You'd think it would be the opposite growing up poor, but spending feels so good. Story 8, I can't travel. I'd love to. I could probably afford to now, but dropping any amount of money on a trip seems insane to me. I grew up never really going anywhere outside of a 3-hour drive and only stayed in hotels maybe like 3 times while I was under 18. It also feels weird to be in debt, but managing it. I have medical bills that I am paying off and credit card stuff, but it's all pretty manageable. Growing up, my mom constantly would get payday loans. We had bill collectors calling nonstop about medical debt, and my mom maxed out every credit card she owned. So I was taught that debt was horrible and you could never get out of it. Also, I really love microwave tortillas and cheese as a whole meal. That and lettuce, cheese, and ranch wrapped up in a tortilla. I think back on it, though, and I'm really not sure how my parents raised me with how much they made. I make double now what both of my parents' combined income was when I was in high school, and I really don't even make that much. Story 9, anytime someone tries to buy me food or anything for me, I always try to go for the dollar menu or try to go for the lowest amount, even if they say buy whatever. Story 10, operating under a barter system with friends. Where I grew up, there wasn't much money, so people often barter good services and often exchange small handmade gifts as payment. Then I moved and discovered that wealthier people do not like this at all. Story 11, I've gotten used to not having a bed frame and ended up using just a mattress and box spring and having old flat pillows instead of new fluffed up ones. Story 12, I ignore the dates on a lot of food. The milk I smell before I use to make sure it's not sour. Constantly checking the bread for mold when I know it's past the date. Smelling the meat before I cook it to make sure it's okay. Unless something is like 6 or more months past the date, it's usually good. The expiration is just the warning that means you have to start checking it. Story 13, it'll start with my own. I can't stand actual quality toilet paper. I can only tolerate the cheap, sandpapery thin garbage. The nice plush stuff feels gross to me. Story 14, leftovers are my jam. I take home friends' leftovers. I have no shame. I can find a good way to reheat just about anything. Expiration dates are like yellow lights. Story 15, I love walking everywhere. If it's within a 60-minute walk, sometimes even longer, I am that person that will walk and wants everyone to join me for the exercise and adventure, when everyone else is begging me to take a 5 to 10-minute Lyft Uber. Hell no. Why would I pay for something when I can get exercise and have a pleasant stroll for free? Story 16, I can sleep anywhere. Slept on the floor for a good couple of years. And can handle heat pretty well, cause we didn't have AC, it was one window unit until senior year. Can literally watch anything and be entertained cause we only had one local Channel 10 station. Saying all this sounds like I grew up in the 50s, but this was all in mid-2000s LOL. Story 17, a close friend grew up very poor and unsupported. Things were always a competition between him and his brothers. So he maintained that mentality into adulthood in many respects. Fast forward to us going to a Smash Brothers tournament. He's egging me on while I'm playing other people, but I'm sincerely supportive of him when he goes up for his own match. As we leave the store, he basically says, wow. I was into you while you were constantly cheering me on. I feel kind of bad now. He just prefers being competitive in nearly any aspect, though it's certainly gotten way calmer lately. Story 18, my parents grew up poor, and we didn't rise well into the middle class until a decade into my father's career. It still shows we always do leftovers and plan several meals around discounted food. Say a big piece of beef or turkey after the holidays. We'll have a nice meal and then eat nothing but turkey for like 2 weeks afterwards. Even now that my dad is well off, they don't buy new cars in their house is a construction project because they bought a tear down in a nice neighborhood. My siblings and I all play instruments, and all our instruments are second-hand broken pieces my dad refurbished and gave to us as our birthday Christmas. We also do joint mom-dad and grandma-grandpa gifts laptops as high school graduation presents. When I was younger, my mom used to have a coupon book, and she lived by it, but after my dad started making more, she just stopped. I also remember driving and never flying, like driving clear across the U.S., because it was cheaper than 4 tickets plus a dog. Story 19, saving every cent I can. I'm talking 80-cent versus 60-cent cans of beans, and never buying actual brand name anything. Pinching pennies never seems to leave you. Story 20, buying cheap things, and making peace with the fact that they will eventually break. It may not taste good, or it won't fit me, instead of investing in something long-lasting. Story 21, I never take anything for granted. Even though I have a good job that pays 6 figures, I always spend frugally and have ample savings and a backup plan in the event I should become unemployed. I don't waste money on non-essentials, and I try to make things last as long as possible, e.g., cars, electronics, etc., before replacing them. Story 22, the concept of selling a car is entirely foreign to me. We drive cars until they die, so completely that even the junkyard doesn't want to pay for them. Story 23, I secretly feel like anyone who orders any drink but water at a restaurant is insane. Even when my in-laws take us out, I order water because I don't want to take advantage of them. Story 24, I grew up with quite some money, but don't have much nowadays. My family bought an old house and renovated it. I was involved there since I was about 10 years old. And I have always been interested in crafting and woodworking and such. I learned electronics, electrotechnic in Germany in a specialized school for 2 years until I decided to do something else. So I like doing stuff myself. I know how to fix most electronic devices, so when I want something new, I just buy it as broken off of eBay or flea markets and fix it. I don't remember what I paid for this 21 LG screen that I'm currently looking at, but it wasn't much because it didn't work. A capacitor for less than €1 fixed it. I do woodworking and build my own furniture, some at least, preferably with that others don't need anymore. I always cook at home, bake my own bread, and actually I buy cheap, but usually stuff that is good quality. My latest is an old broken drill, Metabo. I paid €1 for it. It's already running again. People just don't know how to fix things and throw everything away once it stops working. Story 25, cold hot dogs are still one of my favorite snacks. Super cheap and quick. It's basically a bologna tube. Also, not really a preference, but I'll never touch a random dog or walk up behind one without making myself known and asking the owner if it's okay. It seems obvious, but living in Los Angeles, people will grab or let their children pet strange dogs without even asking. Growing up, every dog was seen as a guard dog until someone said otherwise. Story 26, leftovers must be eaten. Food waste is not a thing in my house. If I have to throw out any food, I just think, well, that's money and a meal wasted. Makes me anxious and angry. Can't help myself, though. I was starved as a child along with being poor and was homeless for a year. Food is everything. Story 27, slept in my jeans, no heating, a childhood home until mom remarried. Did this until I was 14, and I noticed that some of the blue denim dye had actually made my knees bluish gray. Had to stop then. Story 28, doing a large load of laundry. So I don't waste water detergent on a smaller load. My mom used to get pissed when we did a load, but didn't fill it all the way because it wasted water. My BFS mom doesn't understand why I let the hamper become full, because she'll do a load that has 4 pieces of clothing in it. She basically washes whatever she wore that day, the same day. Maybe she'll combine 2 days worth of clothes. I know exactly how much I can put in the washer, have it be really full, but not so full that the clothes don't come out fully clean. Also ramen. Loved ramen when I was a kid. Money was tight. Love it now. Story 29, I wasn't poor per se, but my grandfather was always extremely frugal. He was horrified at the idea that anyone would pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for clothing that had a logo on it, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, etc. I still think of his words when I see someone wearing an obviously expensive label. If they want me to advertise their brand, then they should be paying me. Story 30, I didn't grow up poor, but my dad did, or at least not rich. His mom would make homemade pizza, and heard that pizza places would put olives on pizzas without realizing they used black olives, because she had never been one. So my dad grew up having green olives on his homemade pizza, and kept it up when he was a dad. As a result, I enjoy having green olives on homemade pizza, but I prefer black olives on any other pizza. Story 31, I have weird hang-ups about spending money. I have absolutely no problem spending money on some things, like dropping $200 on craft supplies, but spend $40 on a new hoodie when most of mine are threadbare and full of holes. Nope, that can wait. Story 32, I will buy the same thing. Like if I buy a pair of black and pink sneakers and I wear them out, they'll be back to buy the exact pair, brand, color. I wear one pair of shoes out. Story 33, I don't go clothes shopping as much as I should because I always wore hand-me-downs from my cousins as a kid. I had a few shirts I held onto that were ratty because I had convinced myself that they were still okay to wear. My husband, being the absolutely wonderful man he is, empathized with me and also helped me break that line of thinking to an extent. He surprised me with a small shopping trip where he would pick things for me to where I have zero fashion sense. Whereas my husband has an amazing eye for women's fashion, and he showed me that it was completely okay to buy the outfits. I actually cried. Story 34, I don't like it when people give me stuff for free. I just can't stand owing favors or feeling like a burden. Plus, I'm comfortable not having much stuff anyway. However, without trying to sound narcissistic, I don't mind paying for people's stuff if I have a little bit of spare change because it makes me feel good, and I don't mind being broke. Story 35, I find that since I'm used to not getting the things I want very often, and have to wait a long time if I do, that I don't really want for much. The only things I buy are mostly necessities. I consider it splurging if I buy things like face wash and moisturizer. Spending money on eating out and going to the movies seems almost unnecessary and a waste of money. I could just cook something myself or watch Netflix, not my account OFC. Story 36, I hoard tips. I remember growing up with 6 siblings that we always ran out of tips. I would roll up small pieces of toilet paper or paper towel to clean my ears. Now I buy them by the thousands and use them twice a day. Like someone else mentioned, I love Spam. Spam with rice, Spam with eggs, Spam with ramen noodles. It's versatile. I also love the Vietnamese version of Spam, Chagio with all the above as well. I put soy sauce or fish sauce on a lot of things too, but I don't know if that is so much a side effect of being poor or being Vietnamese. Both am used to eating on the salter side because of all the preservatives in cheap food. My fiancé also finds it weird that I will eat a whole can of corn and nothing else as a meal. Story 37, I don't think I can be called poor, but we weren't rich by any means. Sometimes it's better to wait and keep money to buy something durable than buying something immediately at the cost of durability. That's why a lot of my clothes are either leather or clothes I have since usually 2 to 4 years. I don't buy a lot of clothes, and the most recent one is maybe 6 months old. And every pants I have, I see them till they're just holes with some material left. Same goes for leather. Story 38, I have some hoarder tendencies like not throwing away empty pill bottles. I have a survival pack ready in case I ever lose my home. I really love people who earned their money but hate people who inherited it. I only had my dog growing up, so today I'm active in the fight for animal rights. Story 39, I have a lot of unusual habits, but here are some of them. I like eating semi-frozen waffles from the box. I like my 40 scatter shoes that I wear. I like to eat poor people foods like McDonald's and Burger King. And the number one thing is that whenever someone offers me assistance personally, like when this sweet old man bought me and my brother hot cocoa during a baseball game, I would start to feel bad and tear up. Story 40, hay race, some weird my dad does BC. We're still kind of poor, but transitioning. 1, he catches water while he showers in a bucket to flush the toilet. 2, in the winter, he tricks the space heater into shutting off prematurely by placing it near a wall and reflecting heat back into it. 3, He's constantly increasing the AC temp by 1 degree to make it run less. For when he shops, he'll stare at something for a long time. I imagine he's thinking of all the things he could buy if he didn't buy that item. 5. He keeps adding water to shampoo bottles. 6. He uses dish soap to shower. 7. He will not buy new shoes. He's a contractor, and rich people just like giving away like a giant bag of barely used shoes. 8. He's paranoid about PPL stealing his stuff. We've never had PPL steal from us, mind you. He's got a dozen locks on the door. We got a front gate, and that gets chained up every night. 9. A nice restaurant to him is a Chinese buffet that also makes pizza. 10. Will not throw away stuff. He's a bit of a hoarder and is always bringing PPL. Give him like a hot tub. He's been holding on it since 1999, but hasn't bothered to install yet. He'll leave it at 10 since I'm probably not aware of other things BC and poor. Story 41. I find myself logging into my bank account and retirement account often, just to make sure the money's there. Hardly had any money growing up, and it always feels good to have something now. Story 42. Only having 1 or 2 pairs of shoes. I didn't think it was odd until I got into high school and girls would talk about matching outfits to shoes, not just formal outfits, but everyday outfits. I'm a girl and I like fashion or whatever. I save up for things I like, but I can never bring myself to save up for multiple pairs of shoes. I just wear the sneakers I have until they wear out too much, and I have to get new ones. Story 43. I have a general lack of need to decorate. It sounds weird, but it's not that I'm minimal, and more that I was raised with a super practical mentality. If it doesn't serve a specific purpose, why spend money on it? I guess is the unconscious mentality. Story 44. My wife always tells me that I'll eat anything. I have no palate. Most of the food I eaten has been food to survive, and I've always tried to be creative with it. So a lot of my dishes are stoner meals, apparently, lol. Story 45. I feel guilty if people pay things for me. This could just be a friend buying me a coffee. I think it's a pride thing somehow. Definitely not proud of it. I also feel guilty when I spend money on things that I'm not 100 I need. Even if I do need them, I don't like spending because I'm always scared it'll end up short this month. On the other hand, I spend quite some money on food, also feeling guilty afterwards though. Story 46. I can't stand soda unless it's watered down. When me and my brother were kids, our parents would buy us 5L bottle of off-brand soda per week. To make it last longer, they would just water it down, and when my brother and I grew up, we just kept doing it. Now, even though I moved out and can basically do what I want and potentially buy all the soda I want, I still water down any type of soda or beverage that isn't water because it's too sweet carbonated to me. Story 47. I prefer speaking to people in the same financial status as me because we relate to each other more, and people who had experienced poverty and rose up to be financially stable have a more logical and practical view of things. On the food side, well, my dad always makes this simple meal of fresh cucumber slices and tuna flakes. Added with a little bit of vinegar, it tastes bomb with rice and costs about $1. I eat it when I feel like not cooking. Oh, and I never really get the point in collecting Funko Pops. They're expensive AF, and I know you could resell it if it's a completed set or a collector's item. But in the back of my mind, there's a little voice that says they're just expensive pieces of painted plastic. But no offense to the people who like collecting them. I bought one for a friend as a Christmas present as a start for her collection. Story 48. I don't have an odd or unusual preference, but more have had a humbling effect. I make decent money, a little more than most in comparison to what my mother made as a single parent while I was growing up. But money for me isn't restrained. If a friend's going on a rough patch, it'll help without expectations of reimbursement. My significant other want for something, she gets it. Same with my kids as well. It just holds no real value to me because I'm so used to having none and growing up with barely 2 pennies to rub together. The running joke growing up with my mother before she opened her own accounting firm is she could stretch $1. So far you could hear Lincoln scream. Story 49. That is a hard question to answer because it's not as if I grew up poor and then became something other than poor. I grew up poor. I am still poor. To answer the question effectively, I feel I would probably have to have left that arena so that I know the difference between things that are learned behaviors and things that one does for survival's sake in an ongoing situation, which, from a psychological perspective, are quite different. For example, I do not know yet whether I would be the sort of person to own more than 1 pair of footwear at any one time if I had the money to do so, because I don't have the money to do that. And the last time I had another pair of footwear other than the combat boots that I favor for comfort and utility reasons, it was a gift from a member of my extended family. Another example, I am unsure as to whether or not, if I had money to spare, I would be the sort to go to town on a whim and shop for clothes which have no utilitarian purpose. I do own such clothes, but again, most have been gifts or charity shop thrift store finds. When I am in town, I never window shop. I do not even consider what might be inside the stores that I pass on the way to the bank. I just go to the bank, try not to have a nervous breakdown while confronted with the pointlessness and futility of the enormous physical and mental effort I have expended during my working life. Then I get back on the bus and go back to work. Everything I do is measured carefully. I do nothing on impulse that might have a financial cost associated to it. I don't know what it is to have the choice to live any other way. Since I was a child, I never asked for things. Other parents' children would clamor for this, or that when approaching the checkout at the supermarket, treats, comics, magazines, toys. My mother had to literally point me at things and ask if I would like them. If she had some small piece of change she could maybe spare, and I knew things were tight. So I would, wherever possible, express no interest in things that cost money. There is far more to life, thankfully, than that which can be bought and sold. And so I feel in many respects very blessed, but viewed from a perspective of financial freedom, I always have, and as far as I can tell at the moment, always will live something of a Spartan existence. Story 50 microwave popcorn at home divided into small Ziploc and smuggle into the movie theater, and as an adult, I have added dollar store box candy to the mix. Story 51 always look at someone's work after they're done to make sure they did it right, because one mistake could up everything, and I'm not saying I expect you to mess up, I just don't want to have to fix a now much worse problem, because whoever was supposed to do it messed up. Story 52 people seem to be genuinely mad at me because I'm just too comfortable buying 2 to 5 shirts from places like Walmart or Goodwill. I just don't think a piece of clothing can ever be worth hundreds of dollars. Story 53, my husband grew up dirt poor, literally no running water in winter, blankets on broken windows in NWPA, and so he likes to eat the skins from veggies. Like if you peel a cucumber, he'll eat the peels, or if you trim fresh green beans, he will start eating the ends. Story 54, ramen noodles that aren't cooked. I just eat them like chips, low-no lighting, loud appliances, and engines, basically anything mechanical background noise while sleeping. Sleeping with my ears covered and completely covered in blankets, even while hot. Story 55, I grew up raised by a single mother who was working hard to make ends meet. And while there was always food on the table and clean clothes, I learned that there was no money for any extravaganza like going out or traveling, except to visit the grandparents, of course. When I studied, I had problems getting the money together to pay the rent, like every day. So all this living on a shoestring thing got even more entrenched. Also, I tried to find some job on the side to earn extra money. Luckily for me, I found some work in IT. So fast forward 30 years. Today, I actually have a pretty good income, and my wife brings home some more, meaning we're doing actually quite fine. But that won't change the mindset. I really have to force myself to spend money on anything that's not essential. Buying clothes, nah, the old ones are still good. Look, I can patch this here. Why do I need a new car? Sure, the old one looks like ITLL fall apart anytime, and it probably won't make it past the next inspection, but let's try that first. And then we'll see. Traveling, sure, but we take the bicycles, right? Hotel? No way, there's a nice youth hostel nearby, of course. We take the car and we book the hotel in the end. Remember the wife's always right dash. Story 56, I don't eat a lot, but I hoard electronics like crazy. I always think I might need this part to fix something if it breaks, or I can buy a broken one and use the parts to fix it and use it or sell it. Same with survival books or clothes. I wear my clothes until they're rags. I use everything for as long as possible until it breaks, and I try to fix it. Story 57, if I feel like I really want something, i.e. shirt, TV, etc. If the price tag says 75, I ask myself, will I use this 75 times? If the answer is yes, then I save up for that thing. And if the answer is no, I keep walking. Story 58, I've enjoyed a decent amount of success for a poor kid from East TN. But for some reason, cheeseburger hamburger helper remains far and away my favorite meal. I've had so many fancy prix-fixe meals, but nothing compares to that glove man's delicious food. Story 59, I overstock my house. Not like those crazy couponers who have a whole basement of stuff, or a hoarder who can't walk through a room, but I definitely get this old anxiety pop up when I need to reach for something like dish soap or paper towels or a pantry food item. And another one isn't right there. I have worked my off as a first-generation immigrant, and now my family is well off, compared to where I grew up and how I grew up when my parents and I immigrated, but that food and stuff insecurity has stayed with me. Story 60, I refuse to get a phone plan. No matter how much money I make, it'll always have a prepaid phone. I don't see the point in paying more for the same quality service. I think I pay too much now, and I only pay $50 a month. Story 61, refusing to buy new that's popular at the time. Most fashions fade away way faster than you can save up, and when it fades, you're glad you didn't spend all your extra money on it. Story 62, I hate being in debt. I don't care how much is it or whether I can pay it in 3 months, 0 interest. I will pay for it in full. It's bad in terms of cash flow, but good because it made me more mindful of my expenses. I also hate owing anyone anything. Even if it's $1, I would remember it. Story 63 beans and motherfucking weenies have always been a craving for me since as long as I can remember. I can now afford to treat myself whenever I want, but I still turn to that little red can of bean a weenies. Story 64, I always have to stop myself from hoarding food. If there's a 1-1 sale for cans of beans, for instance, I want to buy 50 cans just in case. I like having things in pairs. 2x a shirt I like, 2x the lipstick I like, just in case. I have to constantly, actively remind myself that I am safe, and the extra cans of beans would not be the thing that rescues me in case of an emergency anyway. I caught on to this line of thinking years ago and have corrected it, but I still need to talk myself out of acting on these impulses. I think people who didn't grow up in unstable conditions probably have a much easier time with shopping and stuff like that. For instance, I can't imagine voluntarily choosing a tiny house or a minimalist lifestyle. I understand where these people are coming from and good for them. But if I only had minimal possessions and a house that was deliberately empty, I would always be worried of running out of something and not having the money to buy it again. Story 65, we weren't exactly poor, but we weren't well off either, as far as I know. The thing is, for Christmas, our family never was and still isn't big on gift giving. We usually had one main gift, which was slightly more expensive, and then smaller gifts like stationery, books, music tapes, etc. The year my dad broke his foot and couldn't work, my parents sat us down and said we wouldn't have many gifts that year, but at least my dad was alive. He had to jump off a truck to avoid being hit by a falling beam, and that was more important. These days, at Christmas, I exchange small gifts with my friends, and my mom sends me a little package in the mail. But that's about it. A lot of people think it's weird, but it's just how I grew up. Story 66, I haven't had breakfast in years. Back when I was in school, I just didn't eat anything until I came home around 2 p.m. to the only meal of the day, usually pasta, cheap and filling. Somehow my body adapted, and now I'm never hungry before lunch. I have adapted to eating dinner, though, so it saves me 365 meals per year for the rest of my life. Story 67, I love PB&J and cereal. I can literally subsist entirely off of both or either of those things. It was usually the only reliable meal in the house when I was growing up. My wife, on the other hand, absolutely hates peanut butter or any peanut product because she said she had to eat it so often as growing up. Now that we actually comfortable financially, I still keep the crafting materials for PB&J in the house and looks at me with disdain. I'm also not allowed to kiss, hug, or talk to her after my sandwich unless I've near gone through a decontamination chamber. I'm okay with this. Can't say we were super poor, but my grandparents, who I often visited, were. They never had a proper heater in their house, so I've really grown an affection for space heaters. They just remind me of childhood more. The whole feeling of being cold does, honestly. We used to sit by the fire all huddled up, me, my brother, grandfather, and it was nice. I can probably see why someone would not like that idea. 3 people crowded around a fire for warmth. But in my head, it was such a magical moment. Story 68, I only own a max of 2 pairs of jeans at a time. I used to do only one, but it was difficult to maintain. I can afford to have many more, but I'm kind of broken that way. I'm working hard to give myself what I need and should have, but there's a weird part of me that tells me I can't have everything I want. Edit, I don't believe one should have everything they want, but I believe I shouldn't feel like I can't have the simple things I want, like more than 2 pairs of jeans. Story 69, I like my 40-cent grocery outlet macaroni and cheese better than any homemade, or even just more expensive brands. If someone has me killed for this, I understand. Story 70, I still don't understand the point of cable. Antenna TV is so much better. You get the core channels plus PBS, a music channel, and MeTV with all old shows. I watched PBS up until I was 15 when my mom could afford cable with her new job, but I didn't watch it. I would rather read. My younger brother enjoyed cable, though. We just moved, though, so we don't have cable anymore, and I hope it stays that way. Story 71, grew up pretty poor, and we always had a big garden and canned food, bought secondhand, made stuff from scratch, and all that. To this day, I'm still into all that stuff. We are way better off now. My mom left my dad and went to school, and now has bought a 1940s farmhouse and supports 3 kids and herself, but we still garden, buy secondhand, make things at home, all that. I plan on doing most of those things for the rest of my life. Story 72, not poor really, but very heavy on the saving money aspect, because my parents grew up with less. I can't just shop without wondering if I can get something on sale, or looking to see who has it cheaper. Story 73, I repair my clothes over and over again, and will wear my clothes until they literally fall apart. I love Kraft dinner with ketchup and paprika. Borscht is one of my comfort meals. I don't have artwork or anything on walls. When I get groceries, I start by checking the sales, then plan my meals from there. I think the biggest effect growing up poor has had on me is my overwhelming desire for nice things. I have purchased things I really can't afford because we never had nice things when I was a kid. I want a nice home and a nice car and expensive jewelry. I have an innate craving for luxury that is harder to ignore the older I get.